every American citizen must have an equal right to vote.
The administration of elections is primarily a state and local responsibility.
Whether you voted for the very first time or waited in line for a very long time, by the way, we have to fix that.
So we're here in St. Louis County on Election Day, special Election Day in August of 2021, and we have kind of a command center in the back here where we take calls about problems out at the polling places and stuff that voters are encountering. So it's pretty low turnout. As of about noon, it's about 4% turnout, so it's an exciting day. So we have some time on our hands, so we thought we'd go around the horn here and ask them how they got into this and what they do.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Matt Harms. I'm a trainer, an election judge trainer for the St. Louis County Board of Elections. How I got into elections, that's a great question. I was a bartender for about 7 years and decided to pony on up to a desk.
So Matt, I think this is your first election like on what we call the tech line, or where like all the problem calls come into. What is it like seeing like the whole picture of what's going on rather than just being like out there on the front lines?
No, I mean, it's all challenging, just figuring out, the different things. You're from 5 to 6, you're fielding a whole bunch of different questions. So, no, it's exciting.
So, Matt, you trained all these workers who are out here, and that some of them are running into issues. So, how do you think your approach to training might change in the future now that you're seeing how people are executing stuff on Election Day?
Really focus real hard on those different issues, but we'll corral them. Other than that, I mean, it's been going pretty smooth, to be honest.
My name is Mike Kruger, and I am the election supervisor for Lincoln County, Missouri, and the chief deputy county clerk for the county of Lincoln. And I started in elections 10 years ago when an associate of mine, who's now the county clerk, was appointed by the governor, and she contacted me and said I need a deputy, someone that I can trust and someone I've worked with before. And so I accepted the position and left my career at the family business of 17 years of being a butcher. And so it's worked out that 10 years later, here we are.
What was the biggest surprise when you started working in the office?
Everyone asked me what you are going to do the other 3 years when there's not an election. So I knew that there were elections every year, but I didn't know that we would be working on elections like almost year-round. And so a lot of surprises as to how much obviously goes into preparing for an election, and how we finish one and start planning for the next one, and we just rehash everything and how can we make it better, how can we do better. I really didn't know what all went into planning for an election.
Have you found any similarities between working as a butcher and working in the elections division?
Actually, yes, I have, because at our family business I was the HACCP coordinator, so a lot of reading statute and trying to understand statute and compliance and a lot of paperwork like that I really despised when I was a butcher. Now that's day-to-day life, and I actually kind of enjoy that part of it now.
What you do and how you came to work.
My name is Nicole Spencer. I'm the Public Information Coordinator for the St. Louis County Board of Elections. And my background is in marketing and advertising, but I spent about 10 years in event planning until the pandemic happened in 2020. So I tried to reach out and get back into the marketing world, and I ended up here somehow. Every election is pretty much an event within itself, because there's so many pieces that go into an election, so many departments working collaboratively to really pull off the day.
as far as what you're doing today, then what are you focusing on throughout Election Day?
On Election Day, my main focus is really just monitoring social media and anything that anybody has to say, whether it's in regard to their voting experience, possibly a problem at a polling place, things of that nature, and then, hoping that those issues are very minor, but then if they become more of a bigger picture problem, then working with the media to answer any questions and to help get them connected with the director so they can do some interviews if that's kind of where we end up going. And then outside of that, just really, helping here with the tech line and answering calls.
You've been involved in, a few elections now. What, if anything, has surprised you about what happens behind the scenes running elections?
I think as an outsider coming in, not really having any insight into an election board, it's really surprising just how much goes on behind the scenes. And I think, that plays a big role in my position because it's really my job to help to communicate to the residents of St. Louis County just, what goes in and how it takes place. Because a lot of people, often don't even know there's an election unless it's a big election. And then outside of that, they really don't know, just what it takes to make an election happen. So the more that I can do to educate them and help them kind of understand how all the pieces fit together, I think that's better for everyone here.
My name is Darryl Brown. I'm the assistant director that's over staffing and training of all election workers on election day. I got into elections in 2006 when the electronic voting equipment first came out. I was introduced to it because they were looking for people that would be able to catch on quickly with electronic devices. I got recommended to the City Board of Elections, and they pretty much showed me how the machines worked. I started off being a tech in the city with the first election when they had the electronic voting equipment. It got to the point where I started training techs because I caught on to it so quickly, and next thing you know, here I am into elections.
So then did the county steal you from the city?
The county did steal me from the city. I was working in the city as a pretty much as a full-time temp, and it got to the point where since I did not live in the city, they no longer were able to keep me there. The city had an election one March where the county did not. And then the county came and saw how we were doing things in the city, and that's how I got introduced to the director at that time. And then about a month later, I was working in the county.
So, Darryl, you've been here long enough to see a lot of change, new voting equipment, from paper poll books to electronic poll books. What's been your experience with the poll workers in transitioning through all those different things?
Some workers accept change more than others. Some are kind of set in their ways and they don't like to accept change. But once you train them and they have an opportunity to get their hands on it, it really comes together.
What's your favorite part about working in elections?
My favorite part about elections? Mine has always kind of been to be able to help people. So when you train workers or hire workers, it's all about developing people to be better, because a lot of people do not know what's in them until you teach them, and they can see that they're able to do a lot of things if you just encourage them the right way. I mean, I think it's also a good thing what we're doing to be able to train people effectively to serve and or represent the election board on election day. That's a very good thing, to be able to see all your hard work and efforts and see what happens on election day, to see that those things are carried out properly.
How did the pandemic affect all of the training that you had to do last year?
The pandemic introduced the training department to something that we had never done, which is virtual training. All of our classes prior to the pandemic we had done in person with hands-on. We were able to introduce virtual training, which is doing training through Zoom. It was something new for the training department as well as the workers. We wasn't sure how effective it would be, but it turns out that it worked out well.
My name is Haley Coulter, and I am the supervisor of the training department for the St. Louis County Board of Elections. I got into elections because my best friend actually worked here, and I was very interested in politics, just in general life, very involved that way. Of course, never saw myself as a candidate or anything like that, but when the opportunity came about to work alongside in the election process, I was definitely interested and happy to be coming on board.
So, Haley, you've done a few different things at the Board of Elections. Do you think doing things like voter registration and absentee and mail ballots and stuff like that helped inform you when you went to train poll workers full time?
Undoubtedly, the basis of knowledge, having worked in multiple departments, gave me a different outlook when it came to training, understanding that it is a big picture and all the different roles that people play and how what happens on election day affects every aspect of every other department. What we train is going to affect everyone else within the office. So having that base knowledge really, I think, prepared me for what things to focus in on and what things needed to be addressed that maybe weren't being addressed prior. When I first started, I actually worked in the Teams department, which is what we would call our registrations here, just processing voter registrations, doing petitions and things like that. And of course, that gives you a good base knowledge, but I always wanted to learn more and know more. And eventually I moved to the absentee department, where I was responsible for mailing and kind of taking control of all the military and overseas voters. And that was something I really, really enjoyed. I liked seeing that whole process and all the different laws and things that are available to those voters and how it all ties into what we do here. But yeah, the training job came about, and it was kind of the catalyst for all those things. It gives me opportunity to really be involved in everything we do here. So I enjoy that.
When Haley came to the training department, it was very beneficial to the training department because of other things that she already had done in the office. She brought that knowledge and skill to the training department and introduced us to some new things that we should include in training, which was very, very beneficial to the workers. It was very beneficial. Her knowledge and skill is great. We really needed it in that department.
My name is Lonnie Peterson. I work in the Wright County Clerk's Office in Hartville, Missouri, and what kind of sparked my interest for elections was whenever I was little, my mom ran for school board a lot, and my uncle is also the chief of police in my hometown. So we've been involved in the election process, and my mom worked at the courthouse for many years, so I kind of grew up around it, and it's always been familiar to me, and it's always piqued my interest a little bit. But I was working at a bank there as a teller, and Nelda came in and offered me a job and told me it was accounting and elections. So I kind of had a little bit of background knowledge with that, but I was mainly starting the job for the accounting. And since then, my knowledge has grown, and it's become very important and very vital to me how it shapes our nation and how intricate it is.
What's been your biggest surprise?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. My biggest surprise, I would have to say, is how much work and effort actually goes in, like behind the scenes of the election. Whenever you're just a voter, you think you just show up, they show up, you sign some papers and log in on a poll pad, and then you're done. And it's not. It's months and months of preparation before and after that you don't see. And a lot of people claim that it's not fair the way that it works. And I almost believed that to a certain degree until I started working in the elections, and now I realize, especially for smaller counties, there's no way that things change the way that people accuse it to be. So that's one thing I've really learned that's pretty important.
Hi, my name is Kevin McCloskey. I've been with the Board of Elections for about 2.5 years, and that entire time I've been in the training department serving as a trainer. Actually, I came to the Board of Elections. I was undergoing some health issues at the time. I was literally kind of between jobs, but I'd been in the corporate world for many, many years. Had been doing a lot of training, various areas, and when I saw the training job open up, I thought that might be just kind of the thing for me. And considering I had kind of an election junkie interest, it all kind of dovetailed right into place.
How did you find out that there was even an opening here?
Actually, I was thinking about just becoming a regular election judge, just to kind of pass the time. And of course, when I kind of delved into it, I realized they have full-time openings up there every now and then. So when I saw one, I went for it. And actually, I think initially when I applied, it may have been for a position in Teams or absentee, something like that. But it's funny how things worked out, because I'm happy where I am and I like training.
Also here on election days, usually in St. Louis County, is our attorney for the Board of Elections, and our attorney right now is Steve Garrett, and Steve has been the attorney for the Board of Elections in St. Louis County on and off for 35 years-ish. So, Steve, how did you get involved in election stuff and election administration law?
One of my very good friends, as you know, is Paul DiGregorio, who at the time he was the director of elections, and I started representing them and represented for 8 years or so, and was off for another 4 years, and then another 8 years, and was off for 12 years, and then, so it's a cyclical thing, but that's how I got involved. Prior to that, I'd been involved in campaigns and elections and that sort of thing, and developed an interest in it. So I enjoy it greatly. It's one of the great joys that I have as a practicing lawyer. It's just something, over the years you learn about it. Not too many people really know that much about election law because lawyers really aren't presented with those kinds of cases very often. So,
what's the biggest challenge that they've thrown at you?
Well, one of the worst things that ever happened was in the 2008 election. I was in the then election office, which was in Maplewood, I think, and there were TVs up around, and one of the cities that I represent as city attorney, still represent them, have for 25, 30 years, was on CNN because of the lengthy line that they had outside the polling place. And some people had said that it took them 6 or 7 hours waiting in line to vote. So that jolted me, and obviously the election board, we sent out some election staff to get the line moving, and what had happened is that they weren't utilizing like half of their election equipment because it was a small place. If you've ever been in where they used to have the polling place, it's a small little house, and so they used half of the area to serve food, and so the voting slowed down dramatically, such that they were on CNN. CNN had a helicopter out in various places in the country, and one of the places they had a helicopter was in St. Louis, and they were up above Velda City looking at the line that went down for a mile or so. So that was one of the more interesting things.
So, Steve, you've been around election administration since the 1980s, and in St. Louis County they were using punch cards all that time through the 90s. You oversaw, as legal counsel, the transition to electronic voting, touchscreen voting. Now we've gone to ballot on demand. In your opinion, or just from your observation, what has changed the most about election administration?
I think that the importance of elections has changed. When I first started, nobody gave a crap. Can I say that on podcast? Nobody gave a crap about elections, really. Yeah, every 4 years when there was a presidential election or statewide elections and that, they cared about it, but not that much. I mean, the right to vote over time has become more sacred, I think. That's a big change. And election administration has had to deal with that and is more in the forefront of things now, I think, than ever before. Certainly now, for sure.
I have my counterpart here, Rick Stream, the Republican Director of Elections in St. Louis County. Rick is relatively new to election administration, but before that, you were in elected office for a number of years, Rick. What did you find transitioning from elected office from running in elections to running the elections?
Yeah, that's my favorite expression. I ran in elections for 25 years, and now I'm running the elections. I think in St. Louis County, I was just amazed and surprised at how complex and complicated it was to run elections, period. I think in any county, but especially in St. Louis County, there's so many moving parts to this operation that I didn't have any clue that went on. And I think most of the public, 99% of the public, doesn't understand how difficult and complex it is to run elections, period. So that was a real eye-opener for me. We never really have any downtime. So I think that's something that the public doesn't understand. I think in St. Louis County we have a bipartisan board too that I wasn't fully aware of before I got here. That I think really assures people that we do have checks and balances. Everybody's watching each other, and we really don't have partisanship within the office. We have to hire people based on their party affiliation, and we do check those out to make sure they are Republicans and Democrats. But once we get here, we put politics aside and just do the job of election administration.
Can you go into a little bit, what exactly is the relationship between the Board of Elections and being a director?
The Board of Commissioners, again, this is all Missouri law, but I was hired by the Board of Commissioners, as Eric was 2 years earlier. The Board of Commissioners, there's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Those people are nominated by the governor and then confirmed by the state Senate. And they actually are like a Board of Education, which I was on in Kirkwood for 12 years. They don't actually run it, but they do oversee the operation. But that's the situation. And they hire the directors. Okay, the Board of Commissioners hires the director, just like they hired me and they hired Eric. So that's the relationship. And there are 6 bipartisan election boards in the state of Missouri, St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and then 4 over in the Kansas City area, Jackson County, Kansas City, Platte County, and Clay County. So the rest of the 110 counties in Missouri are county clerks. And you have 1 or 2 or 3 people actually working on elections, but you have a lot of other things to do too. Here in St. Louis County, for these bipartisan election boards, the 6 of them, we just do elections.
What does the board do on election day? Do they check in with you? Are they around? Do they have to be here?
It's up to the board. It's their discretion. Our previous board were a little bit more involved on election day than this board is. Everybody's invited, of course. They can come and go as they please any day, but election day, sometimes the previous board was here. They would check in. They would actually visit polling places. They went around and visited the polling places just to see how the operation was going. But we just had a board meeting last week. We explained what we were doing to get ready for the election, and certainly gave them the impression that everything was under control, which it is, right, Eric?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Okay.
All right. So now we got Craig Height. He's one of the supervisors of the warehouse logistics department at the St. Louis County Board of Elections. Craig, how did you get involved in elections?
How much time do you have? Well, a happenstance. As a matter of fact, I wasn't really looking to get into the election business, but I was working for the St. Louis County in their printing department, and they seem to have a lot of broken equipment, so I had a lot of spare time on my hands over there, so I spent time fixing the equipment. And then when they decided to close the print shop down, I found out I was going to be unemployed. Apparently the directors there at the Board of Election heard that I liked fixing broken stuff, and they called me up and said, hey, we have a lot of broken stuff. Would you want to come over here and fix some stuff? So here I am.
So now you're managing the warehouse, all of our assets and everything. What's that like?
The whole job itself can be challenging at times. There's a lot of elements that goes into the warehouse and putting all the pieces together for running an election and getting everybody all the stuff that they need. I'd say the most surprising thing about this job is the variety of things that I get to work on. You know, there's every day is a new adventure here, and it seems like for one reason or another, I seem to get my hands in all sorts of aspects of it, and every time I turn around, there's something new comes across my table that I get to get my hands in. So that's a pretty good part of the job.
Bo Coker, IT manager for the St. Louis County Election Board.
As hard as it is to believe, I didn't set out to have a career in elections. I kind of found myself in it, and once I actually started doing it, I found out that I really, really liked it a lot. It's challenging. It's not a typical government job. With elections, you have to get it right. There isn't a do-over. So there's lots of planning and preparation that goes into it, a lot of testing to make sure it's all going to go right, and you know the pace is not a normal government pace of you talk about stuff for years before it gets done. There's a lot of we have to do it and we have to do it right now. Before I came to work here, I was an auditor for a private company. So I started actually in the absentee department here, and then they had some openings, and I just kind of moved my way up.
Is it ever inadvisable? Maybe do we go too fast sometimes, or maybe too slow, or what would you say? I mean, how do you manage change, and when do you know we should try this new thing, or maybe we should press pause on this new thing?
That's a good question. People ask me what I do with the board, and a lot of times I tell them I make the director's vision a reality, because they'll come to me and say, "What do you think about this?" And I'll say, "Well, let me go back to my office and think about that for a little bit." And then I'll think about it for a little bit, and I'll say, "Yeah, we can let people in the county vote anywhere, and this is probably how we're going to make it work." So there's definitely a culture of innovation here. We like to push new advances and new ideas, but I think we have a very good process from the top down of kind of examining the ideas and looking at them from a overall perspective and weighing whether the challenge is worth the risk. So
we just stopped Christian Tolbert, Republican Deputy Director of Elections. Christian has now one of the longer tenures here, over 25 years. He's worked in a lot of different facets of the Board of Elections. What's it been like over that whole span of time, seeing things change here?
Exhausting. No, so as Eric said, I've been here a long time, 26 years. August 14th, 1995 to be exact, but who's counting? Started in the logistics warehouse department. Exposed myself to all the processes and tried to master everything I could, and became supervisor in the warehouse logistics department. On the onset of new technology, the touchscreen equipment, became a technician, a certified technician, and then worked my way up to deputy director. And then actually in 2016, I was acting director after a retirement and back in my current role as a deputy. But I've seen a lot of changes through the years. I think everything is for the better, because, innovation is always important, and used to be a lot of paper pushing, and that's not the case anymore. So, through the years, our staff has become very lean. When I started, we had over 70 some odd employees, and now we're down to around 50. And I think that's due to the innovation and the ideas of our staff. We've got some great people here, and they're doing good things. So I think, the sky's the limit for us and the whole industry, and a lot of companies see that too, and that opportunity. So I think technology is just getting, especially in the election business, is growing and growing.
So you started in 95.
Yes, ma'am.
But how'd you find your way here?
1995. Before here, I was actually in the outdoor industry at a local outdoor equipment shop. So I was into rock climbing and snowboarding, and a lot of the people I was hanging around with, they didn't really have a steady structure in their life, and I knew that I needed something more stable, even though I enjoyed the adrenaline and the exhilaration, but I knew I had to move on and needed a change. So I applied for the position and ended up working out 26 years later.
So you've been here a good amount of time, and when you came in, you had to deal with whoever the deputy directors were at the time. And one, did you ever think you would be the deputy director? And two, now that you are, have you ever gotten to do something you said at the time, like, hey, if I'm ever in charge of this place, I'm going to do this?
When I never thought I'd be in this position, but like I said, I've worked my way up, and but I do tell myself when I'm in this position, there's a lot of personnel and HR responsibilities, and it's not just elections. It's dealing with people and personal issues, and I think that what I would like to bring to the table is kind of an empathy that a lot of times I don't think existed in the past. So I think that people make our business work. So I think people that if you understand what they're going through, or because everybody has different issues in life, and to perform at work you have to be comfortable and you have to be respected, and I think that if you can add that element and treat people with respect and be honest with them, I think that goes a long way.
Hi there, I'm Kay. I've been working in elections for almost 7 years now, and I'm a relatively young guy. I'm 26, so it's a significant portion of my life. When I got into elections, it's kind of a funny story because I had been applying to different tech positions, and when I got the call, I actually wasn't really aware that I was being interviewed while I was being interviewed. Yeah, I got a phone call from the office manager at the time. When he introduced himself, it was kind of loud where I was, so I couldn't really hear it. So it was one of those moments where, when you pass somebody on the street, it's like, hey, you? I thought it was just somebody who knew me, and I wasn't sure who it was. So I just started talking to him for about an hour as I was walking around the mall. And at the end of it, he goes, all right, so I'll see you on Monday. And I was like, wait, okay. So I came in, and since I've been there, I've got to work with and learn from some of the brightest people that I've ever met. And it's been humbling and impressive. I've met a lot of people who are very experienced and really know what they're doing, and I've got to teach people some of what I've learned, which has also been a learning experience for me.
So as you've been working in different parts of the office, have there been parts where you thought you understood how it was working or certain things, but then once you started doing it realized that's not exactly what I thought, but also, it probably needs to be improved a little bit or changed a little bit?
So when I got hired specifically to work on just phones and iPads and things like that, just some basic tasks as a temp. But when I got hired, a large portion of our office was just about ready to retire. So very quickly after I got hired, a lot of responsibility ended up falling on my shoulders. So I got to learn a lot about things like absentees, and I had to very quickly learn things about election processes, how the democratic system works, honestly, because there's a lot to it that I didn't expect. Things like rules on voter registration and how specific state laws are applied. A couple years ago, we transitioned from our old computer system to the MCVR, the state system, and that in itself was a big learning experience. But so I got to work with pretty much every department in our office. It's been a learning experience, and I've taken a lot of what I learned, at least organizationally, from what they taught me, and I've tried to apply it to my position, what I do when you get busy.
I'm only going to ask this because I know Brianna's going to edit it out, but Brianna's the third clerk you've worked under now. I mean, what's it been like working for three different clerks?
It's been interesting and challenging. It's been more than just the three clerks, though, because it's been almost three full regime changes almost, because it's not just when Wendy left, also a large portion of our staff was about to retire, so that was pretty much an entire office wipe right there. And then the clerk after her, we had a whole bunch of new temps in the office, so that's when a lot of responsibility ended up falling on my shoulders, because very suddenly I was one of the only people who really had experience with what we were doing. And then after that, we had another new clerk because between Wendy and the next clerk was our office manager was the interim clerk. And then we had another new batch of temps employees. And then Brianna got elected, and we got more employees that this time full-time. So it's been a whole lot of in and out. I've got to, like I said, I got to meet a lot of different people. So it's been cool because I've met a lot of people with different backgrounds and different views, and it's really opened my eyes to see how people come into elections not really understanding how parts of it function. And then as they learn, they begin to understand more and see more of the broader picture, which is what I think a lot of the public lacks. And so Brianna, a big part of her being in office has been about the public push for voter education, which I am super in favor of. I think it's really, really important. That's been really interesting to see.
Kenneth Knoll, and I got started in elections because my mom worked in elections, and so I got a lot of early exposure to it. And I like helping people, and it's my way of doing it.
What would you be doing if you weren't working in elections?
I would try and find something else that's probably service-based, because I like the aspect that I'm helping people do something and try and make it better.
Al, you want to be on the podcast? I'm Al Molitor. I'm probably the newest guy here on the tech line here. I've been here since January of 2020, last year. Yeah, whatever year that was. So I think it's my sixth. This would be my sixth election. So I left a career of 32 years with an international logistics company. It was a 12 to 14 hour a day job sometimes based on covering the globe. So I wanted to step down a bit, and having been a poll worker for about 10 years as a polling place supervisor, I knew some folks here and thought, you know what, let's give this a go. So I applied for a position, and I basically oversee the warehouse management team and the polling and mapping team. So it's kind of fun.
Hannah Talley, you're the administrative assistant. You've been working here a few years now. How did you come to work at the Board of Elections?
I came to work after a short internship at the Missouri Capitol. I was a legislative assistant to 2 House representatives right after I graduated in December of 2016. And yeah, I kind of fell into my position. I actually started in the judges department. Worked there for a couple of months. I don't even think I got a full election in. And then I came to work for Director Fay.
In your position, when somebody in the office gets a call from somebody angry or somebody who has a very unique question that, they don't know what the answer is or they can't handle it, it quite often comes to you. So what's it like being the person who deals with the angriest voters or the people who need information that nobody else has in the office?
I try to get them to explain why they're angry so I can understand why they're angry. And then I will try to do my part in either following up, looking into election law, because that's where most of the trouble comes from. It's nothing that we have policy-wise. Usually angry voters are angry at the law, but they don't realize it's a law thing. They think it's our policies and stuff. So I will try my best to educate them about, election law and who they really need to direct their concern to, the Missouri General Assembly or the Secretary of State's office.
Having moved from the Capitol and now you're here, do you see yourself as elections as being something you want to do long term? You think that it's interesting for now, but want to do other things? And
before I got into the administration part of elections, I thought I would either be on the partisan side of elections, campaigns, or even running myself. And now that I'm on this side of it, I definitely can see myself long term in this, learning more as I, spend my years here. Yeah, I can definitely see myself in the election side long term.
Okay, thanks everybody for listening to another episode of High Turnout, Wide Margins, and we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you listen to the next episode of High Turnout, Wide Margins.